Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox back for another episode, and we are absolutely thrilled today to have with us John Wells. John, first of all, welcome to the pod.
Thank you, Tom. I'm excited to be here.
John is the publisher of the Kerrville Daily Times, recently arrived in Kerrville, got here about 6 or 8 weeks ago. I think he told us October 28th. So, double welcome. And I wanted to maybe start with asking you what got you to Kerrville?
So it was just the opportunity that presented itself. My family and I've been a publisher since I was 27, so for about 4 years now, and we were looking for a little different opportunity, and noticed that this was a place that, from a distance, looked like something that we might want to look into. And we had the opportunity to come visit back in September. Came here, not just the beauty of the place, but interacting with the people, that small town lifestyle. But we saw the bones of the newspaper and the opportunity that presented itself. And it was honestly something that we just couldn't pass on after talking about it for a couple weeks.
Could you tell us a little bit about your academic and early professional background?
Yes, I went to the University of Alabama for college. I majored in marketing and management. I graduated in 2017. After college, I kind of got into the digital space, selling digital advertising. I worked for a company called American Marketing Publishing. I was working in Brentwood, Tennessee, traveling a lot, 5 days a week. I'd be in a different town. I'd go to Evansville, Indiana, DeKalb, Illinois. I'd be in, of course, Nashville, Tennessee, and did that for a little while and had an opportunity, which I never thought I'd be in the newspaper industry, to be honest with you. But Gannett, who owns the USA Today, had reached out to me about an opportunity they had in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, which I told you I went to the University of Alabama. Having the opportunity to come back to Tuscaloosa was something that I was interested in. It became what they call a digital sales specialist for them, basically a digital guru. Did that for a few years, got married, found out we were having a child, starting a family. And so I was looking for something a little bit more. Had the opportunity to go from there to take a publisher job at the age of 27 in a small town called Bainbridge, Georgia. That's located about 45 minutes north of Tallahassee, Florida, bottom southwest of Georgia. Stayed there for about 4 years, and then kind of that's how we transitioned over here.
So I grew up in a small town, but for the last 40 years until 2021, I lived in Houston. So a very large town. When I was a small child, there were two papers. Now there's one. But I was wondering if you might maybe just highlight some of the differences between a USA Today or a Houston Chronicle or a major US newspaper and a local one, because I'm fascinated by that.
Of course, and I would tell you, a small town paper is all about the community thing. Coming here, like what you mentioned, I started October 28th, so it's brand new. We really want to focus on community, and it's very important, even for to be successful. We want to highlight local education, the good things that are going on. We don't want to be known as a newspaper of bad news, right? We want to be the newspaper of interesting. What are people talking about? What's important to people? Because that's important to me as well. And so we're going to focus on education, local athletics, local government, but we're also going to highlight the people that make Kerrville in the Hill Country such a great place.
I have always enjoyed newspaper coverage of local government. And at one point, the Houston Chronicle was very strong in that. So I always pay attention to, do they cover city council? Do you have a reporter down there reporting on city council? Because I find it endlessly fascinating, basically, you and me and our interaction with government at the local level. Could you talk to us a little bit about how you view reporting on the local government?
Oh, it's very important because sometimes the local reporter might be the only one there outside of the councils that's actually meeting. So we have actually the benefit of coming here. We have, I don't know if you know her, her name is Wanda Cash. Everybody calls her Fluffy. Now, Fluffy is, I almost say, the matriarch of the Kerrville Daily Times. She's unbelievable, but she right now is covering local government for us. That's something that we're looking at expanding. We actually have two brand new reporters starting in January. We're so excited to have them. And part of coming here with the opportunity is they told me I could run it like I own it within the budget, right? So we're looking at expanding that coverage because I do believe, like you said, it's very important that we always have someone there to hold people accountable and let people know what's going on. Whereas the issues coming up that we need to vote on, or if someone's not doing something right, that we're there to call them out on it.
I've had the opportunity to live under 3 mayors in Kerrville in my short time here, and one of my observations is there's a very close public-private partnership, meaning that business people are involved in local government, they're involved in various committees or other parts of government that are non-elected, and there seems to be kind of a Team Kerrville approach. Is that something you've observed?
Yeah, and I think it's very important for local business owners to be involved in their community outside of just the workplace because they are like they're the lifeline of this community. It's very important. I always encourage anybody to get involved if they because being involved is very important, and it's something I'm even passionate about being involved. So I always encourage people, especially local business owners, because they're putting their sweat equity into the community, right? That they should have their voice being heard, and the way to do that is to run for office and get on these boards.
I'm really fascinated by your professional background in digital. Frankly, I'm not sure that's something we had in Kerrville newspapers before you got here. And how do you see the digital world, or rather, how do you see your background in digital really helping the Kerrville Daily Times
Mm.
step forward?
So I would tell you, and I joke about this, but it's the truth. I have a 72-step plan for the next year for the Kerrville Daily Times, and part of that is we are redesigning our website. So then, don't hold me exactly to a date, but in the next few weeks, you're going to see a brand new layout for the Kerrville Daily Times that's going to be more user friendly online. It's going to highlight more sections like education, opinion, local athletics a little bit more than it currently does. And we're going to look at creating an app in the next quarter. So be looking for that. But you talk about my background. So my background is always going to a business and saying who you're trying to reach, learning the target, the demographics they're trying to reach, the geographic area, and what are the if I could pinpoint exactly who your customer is, getting that message to them. And what that does is for a newspaper side, we have the traditional newspaper that goes to people, but we also know that people are more like kind of like this podcast, looking for a digital format to get the news. And we want to be there for them because news is never going to go anywhere. Everybody's always going to need to know and be informed. And you talk about the most, I guess you would say, informed demographic in our area, it's going to be the people who are subscribed to the newspaper. And digitally, where we're going with that is with our format is we're going to have a daily newsletter that's going out. We're going to revamp that. I mentioned the website, the app, and we're open to other ideas. But starting out, those are some of the things that we're saying. All right, for the next quarter to the next year, where can we improve right now what we already have and build off that momentum?
I hope that includes podcasting.
Yeah. This is actually my first one, so it's going so far. I hope so. We'll see about that.
So, what are some of the challenges you see? Maybe if I could ask on the financial side for local journalism.
Yeah, I would tell you the financially, newsprint has gone up. The price of newsprint since 2020 has gone up about 60%. So printing a newspaper is more expensive than it's ever been. And with the loss of a lot of people know, newspaper industry has lost a lot of inserts. Those have gone more online. Classified obituaries isn't where it used to be. So trying to recover that revenue on our end, we're trying to create some more special sections that are going to be targeted towards community. So I'll tell you a couple cool things that we're doing. We're gonna create a section in February and it's called Profile. And what profiles will do each year is we'll have a theme. And this year's theme is actually gonna be Wizard of Oz. And you're like, John, Wizard of Oz, what does that have to do with the newspaper or our community? What we're gonna do is we're gonna highlight people with courage, brains, and heart. And we're gonna do things, everything we're gonna do is gonna be centered around community. And next November, we're gonna highlight veterans. I'm gonna ask every veteran in our community for free to submit their photo, their name, the branch they served in those years. We're gonna run them for free across in the newspaper. And what we want to do is create content that businesses want their name associated with. That it's something that when you see that, you're proud to have your name associated with that product. And from page one of our newspaper to our magazine, every single thing we're looking at under a microscope every single day. How can we improve this? And one of the things we're doing is we're adding more local columnists in our paper, not national, local. So I'm meeting with community members saying, if you have a passion for something in this, talk to me. It might be something that we're interested in. More people want to read about it. We're going to have it in the paper. And I might not have exactly covered what you said, but covering for revenue side of it is can be tough. And it is something that every year you have to kind of look at and see what's changing, what can you add. But at the end of the day, your core product, as long as that is where it needs to be, a newspaper's going to be successfully financially. And I would tell you the Kerrville Daily Times, we're doing okay right now.
So, I am a religious subscriber and follower of print. Until I moved to Kerrville, I couldn't get national dailies. I read 4 or 5 papers every morning, and then they were there waiting for me when I got up. So that's always been a part of my day. It was a part of my parents' day, and so I love the print edition. But I will tell you the biggest shakeup you made to the Fox household was to reintroduce the puzzle insert. My wife was absolutely thrilled when you did that, and it was a huge hit in our household. What are those sorts of how would you even I don't even know how to what to call the puzzle part, but crosswords have been part of my life. I've read the chess sections over the years. There used to be bridge sections. What do you call those?
I call that a reader enhancement. And what a reader enhancement is something that is giving that newspaper a little bit like a a little edge, a little something different, right? It's one thing when I got here, it was listening. I told you about not being here that long, but it's very important to me to listen to people what they want. What has changed over the last few years with the Kerrville Daily Times? Where are we missing the mark? What are we doing right? And so I'll tell you, we have 2 front desk ladies, they're awesome, and I have them every day doing retention calls. They're calling our customers saying, "We appreciate you subscribing to Kerrville Daily Times. What's something we could do better? What's something that you love reading each week?" And see if they have any ideas, because it really this isn't my newspaper, this is our community's newspaper. You mentioned the puzzle book. I had over 100 people from those phone calls. "Where is my puzzle book? Bring my puzzle book back." So that's one thing I heard, and I said, "Why don't we have this?" And we brought it back, like you said, 2 weeks ago.
Then I'll tell you my request. Have a email address for your columnist, and I'm gonna specifically talk about your sports columnist
Okay.
because I love it. He is at or near my age, maybe a little bit older. He grew up in Texas, went to college in Texas. He
Mhm.
writes about 60s and 70s college sports in Texas as well as anyone I know, and I'd love to interview him, but I can't get in touch with him because he doesn't have an email address and he doesn't have a LinkedIn profile. So, if he just a Kerrville Daily Times
Right.
email address, I would have him in a heartbeat.
And that's something that I definitely can look into. I'll tell you, even on my opinion piece, I'll have my email where you can reach out to me. That'll be something I'll look into adding that to his column.
Great, great. What are some of the ideas for columnists that you're at least entertaining? A business or a historical or a other?
It's funny that you mentioned both those things 'cause we've added both of those already, and one of them will start in January, but I'll tell you, Mindy with the chamber, the new chamber president, she's actually gonna start writing a local chamber column about business, what's going on, and we're gonna be adding a historical column in January. The lady we hired, she's let me write a month ahead of time, and so we're gonna start in January. She's already writing in December, and we're so excited for that. But what we're looking for is people who have an interest or something in the community that is I guess they're intertwined in our community. I mentioned local. So these are faces that you see and you recognize and you kind of like you trust their word and what they say because they're in the know. And we're looking to add, we've already added a health and wellness. We're looking to add, I mentioned that historical writer, and we're looking to actually, and Greg, I know if you're listening to this, Greg Schrader's actually last week started his first column, and we hope that continues. He wrote about Pearl Harbor and getting those figures in our community involved somehow in the newspaper because people do want to hear from them and their voice matters. And it's something that we want to focus on is let's get away from the national stuff. People read the Kerrville Daily Times to know what's going on in our community. Like you mentioned, USA Today, who I used to work for. We don't want to be that here. We want to be the newspaper of Kerrville and the Hill Country, and that's what we're going to do.
So it sounds like to me you are creating a community in and with the Kerrville Daily Times. Would that be a fair assessment?
That is 100% what we're trying to do. I want people to go to our website every single day and be like we talk about educated in the know that the things that are important to them are the things we're covering, and each day is a part of their daily routine. We mentioned that how important print is. If your newspaper is 30 minutes late to your house, we're getting a phone call about it. And we want to have that same reaction with people who's going to our website. Every single day there's new news, and we're working on that. I mentioned we're hiring a couple of new reporters, but each and every day we're trying to get better. And I guarantee you in about 6 months, you're gonna say, "Man, how far this place has come."
Having you mentioned you grew up in a smaller town. You went to the University of Alabama. I grew up in a small town in Texas. I went to the University of Texas. I understand the power of local sports. And that is even to my surprise magnified with Tyvee Fight Never Dies. And it's very big here. How are you do you hope to cover the local sports
So
scene?
I would tell you, I mentioned those 2 new reporters. 70% of their time, there's gonna be dedicated to local sports, and we have a lady named Macy and a guy named Chase, and they're gonna start January 6th, and we're gonna like, right now, my goal is to have every single Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, that's the days we're printing right now, is there's at least 2 to 3 pages of sports during school season, going on, where we have each sport dedicated to a sports person, so there's no excuse that there's no one ever there. And we're gonna focus on that, we're gonna grow that, and that's one of, like, our growth regions for this next year. We wanna see 1 to 2 pages go to 2 to 3. Maybe on the weekend, you'll say 3 or 4. And we will like you mentioned, Mike, who does, like he's from Texas Tech, who writes those Texas A&M stories, Texas stories.
Those Texas Tech stories.
And that is something that we're looking to grow, and it's gonna be like I said, it's gonna take a couple months to build up to that because we are looking to grow that. But right now, I'll tell you, I'm even covering the Tyvee games. I covered the girls last night, and it's been fun to get involved, and I've enjoyed it. And If you have any recommendations on what we can do better, like I said, we're gonna try to beat every sport that we can be at. Ivy and Ingram's the 2 schools right now that we're limited resources we're trying to cover. But even Harper, we talk about Center Point, Comfort, those are some schools that we know we have a lot of readers in those areas, but we're gonna focus, like I said, we're gonna focus on Ivy and Ingram, but we still care about those other schools as well.
Couple of weeks ago on a Friday night, my wife we live in Southern Gillespie County, and we were driving into town about 6, and there was 20 or 30 cars that passed us, and my wife said, "What on earth's going on?" And I just looked there and I said, "They're going to a playoff game." She goes, "How can you tell?" I can tell. And it's that sort of passion, that I love about high school sports. One thing you have not mentioned that I'd like to talk about is Schreiner University.
Mhm.
Have you had the opportunity to talk to Schreiner, reach out to Schreiner, see what the Kerrville Daily Times can do with, and be a part of with Schreiner?
It's funny that you mentioned that. Last Monday, I had the opportunity to go tour the campus, meet with the president, even have lunch and talk about how ways we can partner. And one way is we do know that they're going to have a football team next year, but we know they have a lot of other sports. They have a really good basketball team, and they have a new, I guess you would say, a sports information person. And we're talking about ways we can get with each other to cover those sports because I know that people here they have their friends, family who go to Shriner, and we want to cover Shriner. They're part of our community, and that's another aspect where we're trying to grow on that.
Unfortunately, I think we are near the end of oh, no, we're not because there's one of your columns I wanna talk to you about,
Okay.
and that's your trip to San Antonio. And I think you started in Bandera, you went to San Antonio. What really intrigued me was when you admitted you had violated the cardinal rule for having a 9-month-old.
Whew, that was the yeah,
We
we
all made that mistake.
yeah, we got down there and we said we left the stroller at home, and so we're not gonna change our plans, but I'll mention a little bit about that trip. We went down to Bandera because one of our employees had mentioned to me that they have a cowboy kinda reenactment of a shootout, and I'm like, "Man, that sounds awesome." I have a 3-year-old son, and we wanna go down there and check that out, and that's something that when we have a family visit, we're gonna take them down there because I think it was the cowboy capital. And we went down to San Antonio. It was the first time we actually, besides flying into the airport and driving up Kerrville, we hadn't really spent a lot of time down there. And we've always heard the Riverwalk, right? So we had to go test that out. My son obviously had to ride the boat. But yeah, carrying a 9-month-old on your shoulders for a couple hours can be a little bit taxing. So we learned our lesson there.
John, unfortunately, we are near, at the end of our time now, but before we leave, I wanted to ask you if any of our listeners wanted to reach out to you or check out the Kerrville Daily Times, what would be the best place or places for them to go?
So let me tell you, yeah, give us a call or reach out to me. My email is john.wells, WELS, at dailytimes.com.
John, I wanted to thank you again and hope we can continue this conversation.
Of course, thank you for having me.